Hello everyone. Welcome to class 12 English, the third level by Jack Finney. Before you read, have you ever had any curious experience which others find hard to believe? So this is a chapter from your VISTAS and this is a very interesting chapter. We'll have the whole explanation in English. And in this chapter, there's a person called Charlie who goes to the Grand Central Station, which has only 2 levels, but he experiences a third level. And he goes to his friend, a psychiatrist, and let's know what happens here. Okay, so first tell me this. Go into the comment section and comment if you have had any curious experience which your friends, families find hard to believe. So the presidents of the New York Central and the New York, New Haven and Hartford railroads will swear on stack of timetables that there are only 2, but I say there are 3, because I've been on the third level of the Grand Central Station. Yes, I've taken the obvious step. I talked to a psychiatrist friend of mine, among others. I told him about the third level at the Grand Central Station, and he said it was a waking dream, wish fulfillment. He said I was unhappy. That made my wife kind of mad, but he explained that he meant the modern world is full of insecurity, fear, war, worry, and all the rest of it, and that I just want to escape. Well, who doesn't? Everybody I know wants to escape, but they don't wander down into any third level at Grand Central Station. So he says that everyone would say that there are only 2 levels of Grand Central Station, but the narrator Charlie says that he has experienced 3. There's a third level as well in the Grand Central Station. So of course he took the right step, took the obvious step to talk to a psychiatrist. Maybe it's something that goes into his mind. So he went to a psychiatrist who was his friend. When he went there and told whatever happened to him, he said that Charlie was unhappy. We'll discover the name afterwards. He said that he was unhappy, and by listening to all of this, he thought, like Charlie's wife thought, that the friend was targeting her wife, that he is unhappy because of her wife. But then the psychiatrist explained that this world is full of insecurity, fear, war, and therefore he wanted to escape. He wanted to go to a place where there's peace. So when Charlie heard all of this, he said, who doesn't want to? Everybody wants to escape, but they don't wander down into any third level. Everyone doesn't go to the third level. So let's see what happens. But that's the reason, he said, and my friends all agreed. Everything points to it, they claimed. My stamp collecting, for example, that's a temporary refuge from reality. Well, maybe, but my grandfather didn't need any refuge from reality. Things were pretty nice and peaceful in his day, from all I hear, and he started my collection. It's a nice collection too, blocks of 4 of practically every US issue, first day covers, and so on. President Roosevelt collected stamps too, you know. So he says, he justifies that stamp collection is not a temporary refuge from reality, but it's just a time pass. His grandfather did it just for his happiness, and Charlie was even doing this. And of course, he also gave the example of the President Roosevelt, who collected stamps as well. But his friends were not agreed to that. His friends did not agree to this, and they were convinced with the psychiatrist, but Charlie wasn't. Anyway, here's what happened at the Grand Central. One night last summer, I worked late at the office. I was in a hurry to get uptown to my apartment, so I decided to take the subway from the Grand Central because it's faster than the bus. Now, I don't know why this should have happened to me. I'm just an ordinary guy named Charlie, 31 years old, and I was wearing a tan gabardine suit and a straw hat with a fancy band. I passed a dozen of men who looked just like me, and I wasn't trying to escape from anything. I just wanted to get to home to Louisa, my wife. I turned into Grand Central from Vanderbilt Avenue and went down the steps to the first level, where you take train like 20th century. Then I walked down another flight to the second level, where the suburban trains leave from, ducked into the arched doorway heading for the subway, and got lost. That's easy to do. I've been in and out of the Grand Central hundreds of times, but I'm always bumping into new doorways and stairs and corridors. Once I got into a tunnel about a mile long and came out in the lobby of the Roosevelt Hotel. Another time I came up in a office building on 46th Street, 3 blocks away. So what he's trying to say is that here's what happened at Grand Central. So it was summer night and he was working late at office. When he got out of the office, he wanted to rush to his home, to his wife Louisa, and therefore he took a subway from the Grand Central because that's faster from the bus. He was very confused why it only happened to him. He was just an ordinary guy named Charlie, 31 years old, and he's describing what attire he was wearing. He was wearing a tan gabardine suit and straw hat. Now focus on the word. He's saying that I passed a dozen men who looked just like me. That's the key phrase he used to tell that why it only happened to me. I was just similar to all of the people surrounding me. Everyone was just wearing the same attire and they were in the same time. We'll understand what I mean by the same time because we'll study about how he traveled to past. Okay, so he was just rushing home to Louisa. He took a subway. So he went to Grand Central from the Vanderbilt Avenue. When he went to the first level where you take trains from, so he dug into an arched doorway and then he got lost. And every time, he has been to Grand Central many a times, and most of the time he bumps into new doorways, new stairs. It is somewhat like it's growing like a tree. We'll just see this line in a minute or two. So he always bumps into a new doorway, staircases, stair corridors and all. And once what happened was that he got into a tunnel which was a mile long and came out of the lobby of the Roosevelt Hotel. Another time what happened that he came up in an office building on the 46th Street, which was 3 blocks away from the Grand Central. So sometimes I think Grand Central is growing like a tree, pushing out new corridors and staircases like roots. There's probably a long tunnel that nobody knows about feeling its way under the city right now on its way to Times Square, and maybe another to Central Park. And maybe because for so many people through the years, Grand Central has been an exit, a way of escape. Maybe that's how the tunnel I got into. But I never told my psychiatrist friend about that idea. So he says that sometimes he thinks that Grand Central is growing like a tree, pushing out new corridors and the staircases like roots. Why does he say roots and not branches? That's because it's growing downwards. He went to the third level, which was beneath, first level, then second level, and then the third level. So it was going downwards. So there's probably a long tunnel. So he's thinking that there may be a long tunnel which nobody knows about and feels that the city is all right. But it also has Times Square, Central Park and all, and even Grand Central has been an exit, a way of escape. So that's why Grand Central has been an exit, a way of escape, because rarely people know, or maybe they don't know about this secret of there's something that the Grand Central is growing like roots, growing like a tree, expanding its roots. Okay, so he says that this is what all happened, but I had never told this to my psychiatrist friend, because if he had told him, then what the psychiatrist's friend was trying to explain, that he wanted to escape, would have been true. The corridor I was in began angling left and slanting downward, and I thought that was wrong. But I kept on walking. All I could hear was the empty sound of my own footsteps and didn't pass a soul. So he's describing that he went to a corridor which angled left and slanting downward, and he thought there was something wrong, but he still walked. And all he could hear was his own footsteps, and there was no one around. Then he heard a sort of a hollow roar. Let's just read that. Then I heard that sort of hollow roar. Ahead, that means open space and people talking. The tunnel turned sharp left. I went down a short flight of stairs and came out on the third level at the Grand Central Station. For just a moment, I thought I was back on the second level, but I saw the room was smaller, there were fewer ticket windows and the train gates, and the information booth in the center was wood and old looking, and the man in the booth wore a green eye shade and long black sleeve protectors. The lights were dim and the sort of flickering. Then I saw why they were open flame gas lights. So he is explaining that when he went to the tunnel, there was a sharp left. He went there, and he thought he was able to hear some noise. So he thought there was people around, and he thought that he entered the second level. But when he got into the room, that room was smaller. There were fewer ticket windows and the train gates were less. The information booth was also wood and it was old looking. He saw a man in the booth who was wearing a green eye shade and with long black sleeve protectors. That means somewhat, let's just read that, in the 80s or 90s. Okay, so the lights were dim and the sort of flickering was seen, and then I saw why they were open flame gas lights. We'll come to this line afterwards. There were brass pitons on the floor, and across the station a glint of light caught my eye. So then I saw why they were open flame gas lights. So we'll understand कि यहाँ पे देखो, here it is written that then I looked around and saw that everyone in the station was dressed like 1890 something. So we'll come back to this line when we'll reach here. So there were brass pitons on the floor. So there was brass pitons, and across the station a glint of light caught my eye. A man was pulling a gold watch from his vest pocket. He snapped open the cover, glanced at his watch and frowned. He wore a derby hat, a black 4-button suit with tiny lapels, and he had a big black handlebar moustache. Then I looked around and saw that everyone in the station was dressed like 1890 something. I never saw so many beards, sideburns and fancy moustaches in my life. A woman walked in through the train gate. She wore a dress with leg of mutton sleeves and skirts to the top of her high-buttoned shoe. Back of her, out on the tracks, I caught a glimpse of locomotive, a very small courier and eaves locomotive with a funnel-shaped stack. And then I knew. So we stopped here. Then I saw why they were open flame gas lights. So open flame gas lights were like related to the earlier time, 1890 something. Okay, so he saw that there were brass pitons on the floor and that glittered, like he saw a man pulling a gold watch from his vest, and he saw that this glint of light refers to the gold watch, and the person with the gold watch snapped open the cover, glanced at his watch and frowned. Frowned is a facial expression. And then he wore he's describing the attire, that he was wearing a derby hat, a black 4-button suit, tiny lapels, and he had big black handlebar moustache. So if the question is that how did the narrator understand that there was some 1890 something time, this is what you need to write, that he saw a person with a gold watch, which basically refers to the 1890s. Okay, so he was wearing a derby hat, black 4-button suit, tiny lapels, and had a big black handlebar moustache. This is very important. Keywords are very important. So he told that I have never seen this many beards, sideburns, fancy moustaches in his life. And he then even saw a woman which was walking in the train gate, and she was wearing dress with a leg of mutton sleeves, skirts, and the skirt was till high button shoes, and back of her outer frocks he saw that there was a locomotive, Courier and Eves locomotive, which had a funnel shaped stack. And then he got to understand that he has travelled back in the time. To make sure, I walked over to a newsboy and glanced at the stack of papers at his feet. It was The World, and The World hasn't been published for years. The lead story said something about the President Cleveland. I found that the front page since in the public library files, and it was printed June 11, 1894. I turned toward the ticket windows, knowing that here, on the third level at the Grand Central, I could buy tickets that would take Louisa and me anywhere in the United States we wanted to go in year 1894. And I wanted 2 tickets to Galesburg, Illinois. So what is happening here? Like Charlie got some idea that he had traveled back to the time. So to just make sure that he is right or wrong, he went to the newsboy, took the paper The World, and The World was an old newspaper which didn't publish when he was in the present time. And on that paper, on the front line, it was about President Cleveland, and it was printed June 11, 1894. Okay, so this was June 11, 1894. So that means he has travelled back to time. So he went to the ticket window because he knew that this was the third level at the Grand Central. So he wanted to buy tickets which would take Louisa and him anywhere in the US in the year 1894. So he wanted 2 tickets to Galesburg, Illinois. Have you been there? It's a wonderful town still, with big old frames, houses, huge lawns, tremendous trees, whose branches meet overhead and the roof of the streets. And in 1894, summer evenings were twice as long, and people sat out on their lawns, the men smoking cigars and talking quietly, the women waving palm leaf fans, and the fireflies all around, in a peaceful world, to be back there with the First World War, still 20 years off, and the World War II over 40 years in the future. I wanted 2 tickets for that. The clerk figured the fare. He glanced at my fancy hat band, but he figured the fare, and I had enough for 2 coach tickets, one way. But when I counted out the money and looked up, the clerk was staring at me. He nodded at the bills. That ain't money, mister, he said. And if you're trying to skin me, you won't get very far. And he glanced at the cash drawer beside him. Of course the money was old-style bills, half again as big as the money we use nowadays, and different looking. I turned away and got out fast. There's nothing nice about jail even in 1894. And that was that. I left the same way I came, I suppose. Next day during lunch hour, I drew $300 out of the bank, nearly all we had, and bought old-style currency. That really worried my psychiatrist friend. You can buy old money at almost any coin dealers, but you have to pay a premium. My $300 bought less than 200 in old-style bills. But I didn't care. Eggs were 13 cents a dozen in 1894. But I've never again found the corridor that leads to the third level at Grand Central Station, although I've tried often enough. So he was narrating his story, and he ends up here. So what is he trying to say? He is trying to say that, have you been there? He's telling about Galesburg, Illinois. He says that it's a wonderful town with big old frame houses. So he's describing Galesburg, Illinois. So you should know the description for Galesburg, Illinois. Huge lawns, tremendous trees, whose branches meet overhead and the roof of the streets. So he says that in 1894, the summer evenings were twice as long. And he emphasizes 1894 to tell that it is the past time and the summer evenings were twice as long. That means the people were not too occupied. Okay, so the people sat out on their lawns. The men smoked cigars, talked quietly, women waved palm leaf fans, and the fireflies were all around. So that was a peaceful world. So he describes how that peaceful world according to him is. Okay, so to be back there with the First World War still 20 years off, and the World War II over 40 years in the future. So he is describing the time that for the First World War it had been 20 years, and for World War II it is 40 years more. So he went to the clerk figured the fare. The clerk looked at his fancy hat band and just told him the fare. The narrator Charlie had enough money to have 2 coach tickets, one-sided, one way. Okay, he counted the money, looked up and gave it to the clerk. Clerk also counted the money, looked up, and he told that is not the money. If you are trying to skin me, you won't get very far. That means that the currency that Charlie was having will not work in 1894. The currency had changed, and the clerk thought that this is some fake currency. So he told him that, are you trying to skin me? And if you're trying to skin me, you won't get far off here and you'll be caught. You'll be put behind the bars. Okay? So when Charlie looked at what money they were using, he saw that there were some old style bills, half again as big as the money that they were using in the present time. So he turned away and got fast from there, because he didn't want it to be behind the bars even in the 1894. So he was saying that I just went out like the way I came in to the train station, and next day during the lunch hour he took his $300 to the bank and bought old style currency. You can buy old money at almost any coin dealer, but Charlie went to have the old money and had to pay a premium. So his $300 bought less than 200. Okay, so in the old style, and he describes how much money it costs. That eggs were 13 cents a dozen. That means 12 eggs costed 13 cents. So he then ends up his story like, okay, that's the final when I came out. That's the final when I went to the third level at the Grand Central, and although I've tried it often enough, but I have never gone again there. So his wife was pretty worried, anxious about what all his husband had experienced, and she didn't want him to look for the third level anymore. Louisa was pretty worried when I told her all this and didn't want me to look for the third level anymore. And after a while I stopped. I went back to my stamps, but now we're both looking every weekend, because now we have proof that the third level is still there. My friend Sam Winner disappeared, nobody knew where, but I sort of suspected because Sam's a city boy and I used to tell him about Galesburg. I went to school there and he always said he liked the sound of plays. And that's where he is, all right, in 1894. So he's describing that Louisa was pretty worried when his husband told him about what he had experienced, and she told his husband not to look for the third level again. But after his husband Charlie agreed to it, he started collecting stamps. But afterwards they both were looking for the third level because Sam Warner, the friend of Charlie, disappeared and there was no proof where he went. But Charlie always told Sam Warner about Galesburg, so he somewhat suspected that he must be in the third level. So they were just trying to figure out where the third level is. So they of course had some idea that he's in the third level in 1894. So because one night fussing with my stamp collection, I found, well, do you know what the first day cover is? When a new stamp is issued, stamp collectors buy some and use them to mail envelopes to themselves. On the very first day of sale, the postmark proves the date. The envelope is called a first day cover. They're never opened and you just put blank paper in the envelope. That night, among my oldest first day covers, I found one that shouldn't have been there. but there it was. It was there because someone had mailed it to my grandfather at his home in Galesburg. That's what the address on the envelope said, and it had been there since July 1894. The postmark showed that, yet I didn't remember it all. The stamp was 6 cents, dull brown, with a picture of President Garfield. Naturally, when the envelope came to Granddad in the mail, it went right into his collection and stayed there till I took it out and opened it. So he's describing that one night when he was fussing with his stamp collection, he found a first day cover. Now let me just explain what a first day cover is. When there is a new stamp which is launched, the stamp collectors buy some mail envelopes to themselves with a blank paper inside. Okay, so that's how they collect the stamps. So one night when he was just fussing out with his first day cover, like stamp collection, he saw a first day cover. So amongst his oldest first day cover, he found one which shouldn't have been there. That was mailed to his grandfather at his home in Galesburg, and it was dated as July 18, 1894. The stamp was 6 cents, it was dull brown and had the picture of President Garfield. So that envelope came to the granddad, made it into his collection, but never opened it because he thought that it would be a blank paper. But that was not a blank paper. Let's just read out. The paper inside wasn't blank. It read, 941 Willard Street, Galesburg, Illinois, July 18, 1894. Charlie. I got to wishing that you were right, then I got to believing you were right. And Charlie, it's true, I found the third level. I've been here 2 weeks, and right now down the street at Daly's, someone is playing a piano, and they're all out on the front porch singing Seeing Nellie Home. And I am invited over the lemonade. Come on back, Charlie and Louisa. Keep looking till you find the third level. It's worth it, believe me. So are you able to understand that it was for his granddad, for his grandfather, but it is named as Charlie, and it was signed as Sam. So it proves that there was some third level, and like in 1894 or something, his grandfather was alive, and he just Sam mailed it to his grandfather knowing that Charlie would have it. So he wrote in, like, I got to wishing that you were right. I wanted that you were right, and now I believe that you are right. And Charlie, it's true, because I found the third level. Sam found a third level. He's been there for 2 weeks, and it's a good place. He wanted Charlie and Louisa to come over there. There was someone playing piano at the Daly's, and some singing out Seeing Nellie Home, and Sam is invited for a lemonade party. So at the stamp, the coin store I go to, I found out that Sam bought $800 worth of old style currency. That ought to set him up in the nice little hay, feed and grain businesses. He always said that that's what he really wished he could do, and he certainly can't go back to his old business. Not in Galesburg, Illinois in 1894. His old business? Why? Sam was my psychiatrist. So he is explaining, this last paragraph is very much important. It comes as a question very often. So what he is saying is that at the stamp and the coin store where Charlie goes, he found that Sam bought nearly $800 worth of old style currency. $800. That means it was, if Charlie bought $200 currency for $300 of the present time, then Sam had bought $800 of the old time. Then it would have been a great amount that ought to set him up in a nice little hay, feed and grain businesses. So that's a great amount. So he says that he'll be able to put up his business for hay, feed and grain, because he can't go to his old business. Why can't he go to his old business? Because it is 1894, where no one required a psychiatrist, a person to help them with their brain and their mind, because everyone at that time led a peaceful life. So he says that he can't go back to his old business in Galesburg, Illinois in 1894. His old business, because his old business was psychiatrist. Why? Sam was my psychiatrist. So why did that happen? Of course, Sam wanted to escape. His theory proved for himself. Sam wanted to escape from this real world because the real world was full of insecurity, fear, war, and etc. And still, being a psychiatrist, he wanted to escape, and he had escaped and wanted to live there only. So this is how we end this chapter, and there are some questions and you should complete them so that it helps you practice, and that's how we end it. So if you have any doubts, you may type it in the comment section. Thank you.